Welcome. I'm Patty Arroyo and the host for a series of 5 episodes on sexual violence throughout the lifespan. Previously presented were Episode 1 on the overview of sexual assault, Episode 2 on sexual assault in children, and Episode 3 on sexual assault in teens. This episode, Episode 4, will focus on sexual assault in adults, to be presented by Letitia Piper, Program Coordinator for the Guam Legal Services Corporation and a former Program Manager and Social Worker at the Healing Hearts Crisis Center. We will be presenting this series in observance of April as Child Abuse Prevention Month and Sexual Assault Awareness Month. The purpose of this series is to give our viewing audience important information on how to help themselves, their children, families, and friends to identify, understand, and survive rape and sexual assault that affect many families on Guam. As this is a difficult subject to discuss, we will do our best to present this material in a sensitive manner. Many children and families have been exposed to sexual violence, and the best way to work on solutions to the problem is to become better educated and begin an open communication in our community to help end sexual violence. Each episode will open with a short video, many of which have been locally produced. To illustrate the subject for each show, our guest speaker for the episode will give us information about the topic, answer frequently asked questions, and provide a list of resources. The idea for this series came about when the Healing Hearts Crisis Center, Guam's Rape Crisis Center, presented to the Rotary Club of Guam about the serious problem of sexual assault on Guam. In response to that presentation, the Rotary Club of Guam, along with other sponsors and under the direction of the Healing Hearts Crisis Center, decided to create a series of episodes to highlight the problem of sexual violence in our community. The Pacific Daily News published several stories indicating that Guam has 2 times the national average of sexual assault for a community in this size. In the aftermath of a sexual assault, the survivors and their families often experience a major disruption in their lives, dealing with the police investigations, medical examinations, and the process through the Office of the Attorney General, with a possible trial. Even though the advocates are part of the process to assist the victim through all of these steps, this is emotionally draining to the victim and their families. This series of episodes will hopefully provide coping strategies to deal with these high-stress issues, and our speakers will also be addressing ways to help victims and families not only recover from this event, but help the victim heal, as the mental and emotional scars are far more devastating than the physical scars. Let me tell you about the episodes. Episode 1 on the overview of sexual assault, presented by Dr. Ellen Bez and Marissa Uggan from the Healing Hearts Crisis Center, Guam's only rape crisis center. Episode 2 on sexual assault in children, to be presented by Dr. Kirk Bellis. Episode 3 on sexual assault in teens, presented by Dr. Juan Rapadas. Episode 4 on sexual assault in adults, to be presented by Letitia Piper from Guam Legal Services Corporation. And the final episode 5 is on self-care and how to take better care of ourselves, especially in times of stress, to be presented by Dr. Pat Taimanglo. This episode is on sexual assault and adults by our guest speaker, Ms. Letitia Piper. This video dealing with sexual assault and rape of adults has several important messages.
How do you think mindfulness affects people in terms of being parents, or why it could be valuable to parents?
Well, certainly, if there's any area mindfulness can help in, it's in parenting, because, wow, it's hard to have kids, and I mean, it was my most favorite thing I ever did was have kids and be home with them. It's a lot of work, and that's why in the olden days people had kids when they were 20, because that's how much energy you need with them. But as we were more aging parents, and I didn't have my first child till I was 30, you know, it requires a lot of patience. So what mindfulness does is allows us to be more patient with our children, more present with them. I'm of the belief there's no such thing as multitasking. If you're on the phone with your best friend Susie, you're not with your child. And so we need to understand that we need to unitask and be present every moment with what we want to be engaged with. There's no such thing as multitasking. It doesn't work. So I think that mindfulness helps us become better parents by having us be in the here and now with our child. And they know, whether we're paying attention or not. And so, for example, with my kids, I would say, they'd be like, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. And I'd say, 1 minute, I'm on the phone with Joe. I'm going to hang up with him. I want to hear every word you're saying. I don't want to miss a word. So hold on 1 second. I'm going to get off the phone. I'm going to be with you. That's fine with them, you know, because then they know they have you and they're with you. And I think that's a really important part of parenting. Our kids have a good bull meter. You know, they know when we're just saying something and we're not really honest. And I think we need to be. And mindfulness can help us to stay that way with our children.
Mm-hmm. John Kabat-Zinn is fond of saying that children are an 18-year retreat into mindfulness. I mean, if you really are present.
And more.
As parents.
You know, I read the Prophet, Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. There's a poem in there called The Children. And I read it when I was 14, and somehow I just knew that this was the blueprint for how to parent. And the notion was that our children aren't ours, you know. They come through us, but they're not of us. And we need to be like bows that bend as they're the arrows that shoot forth. And it is. I would say to my kids, I only have 18 years to get this through your head, you know. And we would talk about a lot of things. I wanted to make sure they knew how to sew on a button, iron a shirt, you know, these very important things of life. So presence with them is very important. I was told by a therapist once, you know, I always thought as a journalist and, you know, mother that I was supposed to teach them how to live, teach them how to be. But the truth, number one, is that they're always teaching us. And number two, a therapist told me, when your kids get home from school, go downstairs in their room and sit there for 45 minutes and just listen. Listen to their day, listen to everything they have to say. Don't teach them anything, just listen and be present. And that is the greatest teaching of all for kids, to have a present parent who's so interested in hanging on every word. That's mindfulness, that's mindful parenting.
When we return from our commercial break, we will hear from Miss Letitia Piper. Welcome back. I'm here with Letitia, and she will discuss sexual assaulted adults. Letitia is a program coordinator with the Guam Legal Service Corporation Disability Law Center, working with the Legal Assistance for Victims program for victims of sexual assault, family violence, dating violence, and stalking, as well as the Legal Services Corporation program for individuals with low income. Prior to this, she was a social worker and forensic interviewer for 11 years with the Healing Hearts Crisis Center, also acting as the program manager for the center for about 5 of those years.
In talking about preventing sexual assault across the lifespan, a couple of areas that I will focus on are intimate partner violence as well as stalking, which are 2 forms of controlling behaviors that are more common than we'd like to believe within our island community. We'll start with intimate partner violence. This is a type of violence that happens between people in an intimate relationship. The abuser can be a current or former partner or spouse. In many cases, it's usually the woman being abused by the man, but that doesn't mean that men can't be victims of this type of abuse. And it can also happen within same-sex relationships. Intimate partner violence is a type of violence that can take on many different forms. It can include emotional abuse like yelling, controlling what you do, or threatening to cause serious problems for you. Physical abuse like hitting, shoving, kicking, biting, or throwing things. Sexual abuse like forcing you to do something sexual you don't want to do. And even threats of abuse. According to the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, sexual assault in a relationship usually happens with some other form of abuse, and a majority of women who were physically abused by an intimate partner had been sexually assaulted by that same partner. Intimate partner violence is a type of violence that can also lead to isolating a person from family and friends or keeping them from accessing information and assistance. It might not be easy to tell at the beginning of a relationship if it will become abusive. Since every relationship is different, intimate partner violence doesn't always look the same. But the one thing that most abusive relationships have in common is that the abuser can do many different things to have more power and control over their partner. These are behaviors that can physically harm, create fear, prevent a partner from doing what they wish, or forcing them to behave in ways they don't want. Thanks to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, here are some warning signs or red flags to look out for in your relationship. Telling you that you can never do anything right, showing jealousy of your friends and time spent away, keeping you or discouraging you from seeing friends or family members, embarrassing or shaming you with put-downs, controlling every penny spent in the household, taking your money or refusing to give you money for expenses, looking at you or acting in ways that scare you, controlling who you see, where you go, or what you do, preventing you from making your own decisions, telling you that you're a bad parent or threatening to harm or take away your children, preventing you from working or attending school, destroying your property or threatening to hurt or kill your pets, intimidating you with guns, knives, or other weapons, pressuring you to have sex when you don't want to or do things sexually you're not comfortable with, pressuring you to use drugs or alcohol. The other type of behavior that I wanted to cover is stalking. There are different definitions for stalking, but it's basically a course of conduct directed at a specific person that would cause any reasonable person to feel fear. Stalking can be done by someone that you know or by someone you don't know at all. Most of the time, the stalking is done by someone a person has been involved with or dated. Some things that stalkers do include follow you and show up wherever you are, send unwanted gifts, cards, letters, texts, or emails, damage your home, car, or other property, monitor your phone calls or computer use technology like hidden cameras or GPS to track where you go, drive by or hang out at your home, school, or work, threaten to hurt you, your family, friends, or pets, find out about you by using public records or online search services, or through other means like contacting friends, family, neighbors, or coworkers, or other actions that control, track, or frighten you. No two stalking situations are alike. It's unpredictable and dangerous. If you are in immediate danger, call the police. Trust your instincts and don't downplay the danger. Take the threat seriously. You can contact a crisis hotline or a victim service agency, such as the Victims Advocates Reaching Out, or VARO, and they can help you develop a safety plan. You may also want to consider getting a court order that tells the stalker to stay away from you. Several places that may be able to help assist you with this are Guam Legal Service Corporation, Disability Law Center, the Public Defenders Corporation, or even going straight to the Superior Court of Guam to file for a protective order without an attorney.
Welcome back. Letitia will now answer some questions. Here's the first question. In terms of prevention, what would you say is a strategy to deal with intimate partner violence?
One of the fundamental things that needs to be promoted is healthy, respectful relationships. Teaching this to children and promoting it at all stages in development would go a long way in preventing intimate partner violence down the road. If people learn to communicate effectively and learned healthy boundaries, having this in their relationships would allow them to understand their partner and be able to connect in a way where there's respect for each other and the opportunity to speak freely with each other without the fear of criticism. It would allow each partner to build trust and to not pressure the other to do things that they don't want to do.
What does consent mean in a healthy relationship?
In a healthy relationship, both parties would understand what consent is and that saying yes means yes. This consent would allow both partners to express what they do want to experience. They would understand that consent is not a free pass and that saying yes to one act doesn't mean you have to consent to other acts. They would understand that just because you're in a relationship doesn't automatically mean you're giving consent, and that consent can be taken back at any time. They would know that the absence of a no doesn't equal yes, and they would know that it's not consent if you're afraid to say no. Sometimes people are manipulated, pressured, or threatened to say yes, or they're unable to give consent, like if someone were unconscious or under the influence of something that makes them unable to understand what they're saying yes to.
Another population that we haven't discussed is individuals with disabilities. How is this population affected by sexual violence?
Individuals with disabilities make up a very vulnerable population when it comes to sexual violence. They're more likely to fall victim to sexual assault than people without disabilities. Depending on the disability that a person has, they may not be physically able to fight off someone who is trying to hurt them. They may not be able to speak or inform a caretaker or service provider that they are scared of someone or that someone has hurt them. In some cases, where the abuser is a family member or intimate partner and is also the main caretaker, the abuse may happen over longer periods of time without the individual being able to get help. Sometimes this is because of the fear of losing the relationship or being put in an institution if there's no longer a caregiver. Since there are many different types of disabilities, which can range from those with minimal interruption to everyday life activities to disabilities that severely impact what a person can do for themselves, like, for example, someone who may have an intellectual or developmental disability. Sometimes that individual may not even realize that they're in a situation where abuse is happening to them or that someone is taking advantage of them. So the sexual abuse may occur and they don't understand what just happened, why it happened, or that it can happen again. So physical and sexual abuse may take on different forms with people with disabilities, but the main component of exerting power and control over another person is still there.
How can we promote prevention to this population when we know there are a wide range of disabilities that may affect a person and how they're able to function and live their lives?
I think first off, we need to remember that people with disabilities are people. They are not their disability. They too should be treated with respect. And in knowing that, when teaching children and teens about healthy relationships and respect and about bodies and how to recognize different types of touch and what may be red flags, we need to make sure to include people with disabilities in that conversation so that they learn too. When working with people with disabilities, whether we're healthcare providers, social service providers, teachers, coworkers, or even a classmate, especially when communication is a barrier, we have to learn to take cues, observe body language and a person's surroundings, and ask questions if we feel that something may be wrong. You never know. You may be the only voice that they have. We also need to make sure that people know that there are laws that protect adults with disabilities and the elderly population. This allows the Bureau of Adult Protective Services to investigate suspected reports of abuse. The law also lists mandated reporters, meaning that certain professions need to report any suspected abuse of adults with disabilities or the elderly population. Some of these mandated reporters include emergency medical service providers, non-emergency transport providers, medical and allied health providers, banking or financial institution personnel, pension providers, teachers, and practicum students in the health and human services.
Thank you, Letitia, for those very informative answers. When we return, we will share our resource list that you can use as a reference. Welcome back. As promised, here is a list of resources where you can seek some help. Healing Hearts Crisis Center and Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, 647-5351. After hours and weekends, call 647-8833. The Guam Police Department Victims Assistance Unit, 475-8620 or 472-8911. Adult Protective Services, Department of Public Health and Social Services, 735-7384 through 6. After hours and weekends, call 632-8853. Victims Advocate Reaching Out. The hotline number is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 477-5552. Ali Shelter 1 and 2, Catholic Social Services, 649-2533 or 24/7 hotline 648-4673. Guam Coalition Against Sexual Assault and Family Violence, 479-2277. Reference the Guam Community Resource Directory. Tune in next week when our topic will be self-care with Dr. Patricia Timinglow from DOC.